My boyfriend's meticulously planned proposal ended with a dead phone, a lost speech, and him on his knees in the pitch black, desperately searching for the diamond ring he'd just dropped in the mud. And it was, without a doubt, the most romantic moment of my entire life. This disaster was, unbelievably, supposed to be the perfect end to the perfect day. To understand how my brilliant boyfriend's grand plan ended with us in the mud, we have to go back to the beginning. It started like any other Saturday, or so I thought. The soft light of dawn barely pierced the blinds when I became aware of Liam's movements. He wasn't just awake, he was activated. His side of the bed, usually a rumpled testament to a peaceful night's sleep, was a perfectly smoothed canvas. The rhythmic, almost silent clinking from the kitchen suggested a level of focused culinary activity usually reserved for a Michelin star chef, rather than a man whose typical Saturday morning involved negotiating the complex relationship between cereal and milk. I pretended to be asleep, peeking through slitted eyelids. He moved with an unusual precision, a quiet intensity. He was dressed, not in his usual weekend lounge attire, but in a pressed shirt and trousers. This was not a man preparing for a casual brunch. This was a man preparing for a mission. His lips moved silently as he checked his watch for the third time in as many minutes, then made a small, decisive nod to himself. The air thrummed with his barely contained anticipation. Eventually, he padded into the bedroom, a tray in his hands. On it sat 2 mugs of coffee, perfectly brewed, and a plate of toast cut into precise triangles. Beside them, pristine and undeniably official, was a laminated card. It was a single sheet, thick and glossy, with a neatly printed title, Chloe and Liam, An Extraordinary Journey, Today's Itinerary. He placed the tray carefully on my bedside table, his eyes shining with an almost childlike excitement. "Good morning, my love," he whispered, his voice a little too bright for the early hour. "I have a surprise." I woke up, feigning a sleepy stretch. "A surprise?" I mumbled, already taking in the laminated card with an amused curiosity. Liam loved planning, but this was a whole new level of dedication. "Indeed," he beamed. "Today, you are to simply relax and trust me. Everything is taken care of. Consider it a celebration. Of us." He tapped the laminated card. "Your first instruction is to enjoy this excellent coffee and toast. Your second... well, that comes after you're ready." He vanished back into the kitchen, humming a tune I didn't recognize, but which sounded suspiciously like a triumphant fanfare. My amusement grew as I prepared. Every outfit choice, every hair product, seemed fraught with a new significance, though Liam remained tight-lipped, only offering cryptic smiles and assuring me I looked perfect. His energy was infectious, even if slightly overwhelming. Finally, we were in the car, and Liam, with the air of a seasoned tour guide, began to explain. "Our first stop," he announced, his voice imbued with a dramatic flourish, "is a place of humble beginnings, yet profound significance. The very spot where our story truly began." We pulled up to the familiar block, and my heart did a little flutter. There it was. The Daily Grind, the quirky independent coffee shop with the mismatched furniture and the best almond croissants in the city. It was where we'd had our very first date, 5 years ago. He'd spilled his coffee, I'd laughed, and somehow, amidst the caffeine and chaos, we'd found our rhythm. Liam pulled into a parking spot he'd clearly scouted, a prime location right across the street. He looked at me, a soft, sentimental smile on his face. "Remember that day? You had the lavender latte, I had the double espresso, and I tried to impress you with my knowledge of obscure indie bands." I laughed, the memory warm and comforting. "And you managed to spill half of it down your shirt trying to gesture emphatically about a band I'd never heard of." "Details, details." He waved a dismissive hand, though his smile deepened. "It was charming, you said. And now we relive that moment. A quiet, nostalgic coffee, a little reflection." He gestured towards the shop with a grand sweep of his hand. It was then that the first, glorious crack appeared in his perfect plan. The Daily Grind was not quiet, nor was it nostalgic or reflective. The windows, usually adorned with intricate chalk art, were now plastered with bright, primary-colored balloons. A large banner, crudely hand-painted, declared, "Happy 5th birthday, Leo." From inside, a cacophony erupted, the high-pitched shriek of children, punctuated by the unmistakable, rhythmic thud of a bouncy castle, in full, frenetic operation. A small, beleaguered sign taped to the door, easily missed in the festive chaos, read, "Closed for private event." Liam froze, his arm still outstretched in a dramatic flourish, his jaw slowly unhinging. His carefully composed expression crumbled, replaced by a look of utter bewilderment, then dawning horror. He blinked. Once. Twice. He looked at me, then back at the shop, as if hoping the bouncy castle and shrieking children would magically transform back into a serene tableau of artisanal coffee drinkers. A children's party?" he finally managed, the words laced with disbelief. "But I checked. I called last week. They said nothing." I stifled a giggle, covering my mouth with my hand. This was so classically Liam. He'd accounted for every variable except the sudden, unpredictable surge of childhood jubilation. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, already ruffled with the burgeoning anxiety. "Right," he said, forcing a bright, unconvincing smile. "Well, a slight atmospheric adjustment. Let's find another charming independent coffee shop nearby. The spirit of the first date, not the exact location, is what truly matters, eh?" He started the car with a determined sigh, the engine sputtering to life in reluctant agreement. Our impromptu first date coffee was consumed in a generic chain cafe, the kind of place where the background music was aggressively inoffensive and the pastries tasted vaguely of regret. Liam tried valiantly to recreate the magic, but his spirit was clearly dampened. He kept glancing at his watch, a flicker of worry in his eyes. The itinerary, I suspected, was already running behind. Next, we were headed to the park. This wasn't just any park, it was our park. The sprawling green expanse where, on a particularly warm autumn afternoon, we'd wandered for hours, talking about everything and nothing. It was there, nestled under a grand oak tree, that we'd first confessed our deepest fears and wildest dreams to each other, the kind of conversation that shifts a relationship from casual to profound. Liam had planned a picnic. As we walked towards a secluded spot he clearly had in mind, he pulled out a large, wicker basket from the car's trunk. "And for this special location," he announced, his voice regaining some of its earlier enthusiasm, "I have prepared a visual journey through our love story." From the basket, he carefully extracted a thick, leather-bound photo album. It was a masterpiece, clearly handmade, with Chloe and Liam, our adventure, embossed on the cover. My heart swelled. This was so thoughtful, so utterly him. Every page, I knew, would be filled with memories. He opened it, revealing the first few pages, baby pictures of us, photos from our first awkward dates, inside jokes captured in blurry snapshots. It was beautiful. He spread a blanket under the very oak tree where we'd had that momentous conversation, arranging the picnic basket with precision. "Here," he said, handing me the album. "I wanted to look through this with you. Remember all the moments that led us here, to this very spot." I took the album, feeling the weight of it, the tangible representation of our shared history. I smiled, about to open it to the next page, when it happened. A low, mechanical hiss. Then, a sudden, powerful spray of water erupted from a hidden sprinkler head, directly beside our carefully laid blanket. It wasn't a gentle mist. It was a full-on, high-pressure jet, designed to thoroughly drench a large area. Our blanket, the carefully arranged picnic, and, most tragically, the beautiful, irreplaceable photo album in my hands, were instantly, utterly soaked. I gasped, dropping the now-sodden album as Liam leaped back with a yell, his face a mask of disbelief. The sprinkler, unperturbed, continued its relentless assault. The water, surprisingly cold, plastered his shirt to his chest and plastered my hair to my face. The carefully prepared sandwiches dissolved into mush. The special, sparkling cider, meant to be a celebratory toast, was now mixed with grass and park water. Liam stood there, dripping, his eyes wide with a comical anguish. He looked at the mangled, dripping photo album, then back at the aggressively watering sprinkler, then at me, his shoulders slumped. The park sprinklers," he enunciated slowly, as if stating the most profound scientific discovery. "They're on a Saturday afternoon. Why are they on? It's not even that dry." He sounded genuinely bewildered, as if the park's irrigation system had personally conspired against him. I burst out laughing, a full, unrestrained peal of mirth. Liam, still soaked and dejected, looked at me, a flicker of indignation in his eyes. "It's not funny, Chloe. The album, I spent weeks on it. It's ruined." He gestured helplessly at the soggy pages, already beginning to warp and bleed ink. "Oh, Liam," I managed between giggles, wiping a tear of laughter from my eye. "It is funny, and it's amazing. You spent weeks on this. This is so much more us than some pristine, perfect photo album." As I watched him try, futilely, to salvage the soggy pages, carefully peeling them apart, I had a sudden, undeniable realization. This wasn't just a celebration of us date. This was the date. This meticulously planned, now spectacularly failing day was building to something monumental. The sheer, overwhelming effort, the palpable desperation in his eyes, the way he was trying to perfectly orchestrate every memory. It could only mean one thing. Liam was going to propose. And the realization, far from adding pressure, made the entire chaotic spectacle even more endearing. His perfectionism, usually a source of gentle teasing, was now a testament to his boundless love. The collapsing plan was, in its own way, the most perfect preamble. We squelched back to the car, our clothes clinging uncomfortably, the faint smell of wet earth and dying ambition clinging to us. Liam was quiet, clearly reeling from the sprinkler incident. He fiddled with the car's air conditioning, aiming the vents at his still damp shirt. "Next stop," he announced, his voice regaining a determined edge, though a little less bright than before. The restaurant. The restaurant. Another landmark in our relationship. It was where we'd celebrated our 1-year anniversary, a surprisingly elegant place that felt utterly sophisticated to our then younger selves. Liam had painstakingly secured a reservation months ago, clearly hoping for a more refined, less chaotic interlude. We arrived, late of course. The park incident had set us back significantly, and we were not just late, we were disheveled. Liam's hair was still slightly damp, his shirt clung to him in places, and there was a faint, grassy stain on his trousers. My own hair, usually well-behaved, was frizzing in protest, and a smudge of mud adorned my cheek, a memento from a brief, valiant attempt to rescue a particularly sentimental photo from the puddles. The maitre d', a man whose impeccably starched uniform and pursed lips suggested a deep personal offense at anything less than perfection, eyed us with thinly veiled disdain. "Reservation for?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "Thornton," Liam mumbled, attempting to smooth his damp shirt. "Liam Thornton. For 7:30. We're a little behind schedule." The maitre d' consulted his large, leather-bound book with an agonizing slowness, his eyes occasionally flicking up to assess our unfortunate appearance. He sighed dramatically, a sound that conveyed the immense burden of our presence. "Ah, yes. Thornton. Well, as you are nearly 45 minutes late, your preferred table, of course, has been reallocated." He gave a dismissive flick of his wrist. "We can offer you the table by the service entrance." The table by the service entrance was, in fact, a small, wobbly two-top crammed against a swinging door that led directly to the kitchen. Every 2 minutes, a server would burst through, carrying trays of steaming food, sending a gust of hot, garlicky air wafting over us. The clatter of pots and pans, the shouted orders, the faint, persistent smell of burnt sugar. It was an assault on the senses, the antithesis of the elegant, romantic dinner Liam had envisioned. Liam's face, already strained, tightened further. He tried to protest, but the maitre d' had already turned away, dismissing us with a regal wave. We sat down, perched precariously on our chairs, feeling utterly out of place amidst the crisp white tablecloths and hushed conversations of the other diners. Liam, ever the optimist, attempted to regain control. "Right," he declared, picking up a menu with more force than necessary. "Well, perhaps it's quaint, a unique perspective on the culinary arts." But the experience was anything but quaint. We received our food 20 minutes after the couple who had arrived after us. The wine he'd carefully chosen was brought to the wrong table. And at one point, a busboy, rushing through the service door, clipped Liam's elbow, sending a fork clattering to the pristine floor. Each minor infraction chipped away at Liam's remaining composure. I, on the other hand, was finding it increasingly hilarious. The sheer absurdity of it all, the relentless assault of misfortune, was making me giddy. I caught Liam's eye across the wobbly table, a small smile playing on my lips. He, however, was in no mood for amusement. His jaw was clenched, his eyes darting nervously towards the kitchen door. The romantic dinner was a bust. The car ride to the final destination was quiet, almost reverent in its silence. Liam was clearly defeated. His shoulders slumped, and he stared straight ahead, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. The meticulous planner had been bested by an unexpected children's party, a rogue sprinkler, and a condescending maitre d'. I reached over and gently placed my hand on his arm. "Liam," I said softly, "I'm having a wonderful time." He flinched, as if my words had broken a delicate spell of despair. He looked at me, his eyes full of a profound sadness. "No, you're not," he mumbled, his voice hoarse. "It's been a disaster. Every single thing has gone wrong. I wanted this to be perfect. For you." "It is perfect," I insisted, squeezing his arm. "It's perfectly us. Messy, unpredictable, but full of effort, and it's making me laugh." He offered a weak, watery smile, but his focus was already returning to the road, to the final, crucial destination. "Just one more thing," he said, his voice imbued with a desperate plea. "Just let me get this last bit right, please." I nodded, my heart aching for his earnestness. He was so determined, so committed to making this moment special. The scenic overlook, the grand finale. He clearly still held on to the hope that, despite everything, he could pull off a flawless ending. We finally arrived, pulling off the main road onto the gravelly, uneven track that led to the overlook. The last sliver of twilight had long since faded, replaced by an absolute blackness. There were no streetlights, no ambient glow from a distant town, just us, the car, and the vast, inky expanse of the night. Liam cut the engine. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by the distant chirping of unseen insects. He reached for his phone, fumbling in the dark. "Right," he whispered, his voice laced with the final vestiges of his carefully constructed plan. "My speech. It's all in here. I wanted to tell you." He pressed the power button. Nothing. He pressed it again, holding it down. Still nothing. The screen remained stubbornly, defiantly blank. The phone, a repository of his deepest feelings, was utterly dead. He stared at it, his face illuminated by the faint glow of the dashboard lights, a look of complete and utter devastation spreading across his features. His shoulders slumped. The final domino had fallen. "No," he whispered, a strangled sound of despair. "No, no, no. The battery, it's dead." He stared at the lifeless device as if it had personally betrayed him. "My speech. It was perfect. I spent weeks writing it. Every word. It was supposed to be—" His voice trailed off, lost in the echoing silence of his shattered plans. Then, with a desperate sigh, he reached for the glove compartment. "The ring," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "At least, the ring?" His hand closed around a small velvet box. This was it, the very last chance for a moment of grace. But just as he brought it into view, his fingers, tired and trembling from a day of thwarted efforts, fumbled. The box slipped. It wasn't a slow, gentle descent. It was a sudden comical arc, a final flourish of misfortune. It shot out of the open car door, a tiny, dark missile launched into the unknown. We heard it land with a soft, squishy thud. Liam froze, his hand still outstretched, his mouth slightly agape. He looked at the open car door, then back at his empty hand. He turned to me, his eyes wide, with a comical horror. "The ring," he whispered, the words barely escaping his throat. "It's in the mud. I dropped it. I dropped the ring." I stared at him, then at the unseen patch of mud beyond the car. It was too dark to see anything. "Well," I said, a faint giggle escaping me, "we'd better find it then, before a squirrel proposes to a badger." He stared at me, then let out a defeated groan. "Chloe, this isn't funny. This is it. The end. Everything is ruined." He scrambled out of the car, pulling out his phone, the very one with the dead battery, and frantically tried to switch on its flashlight, a futile gesture that only highlighted the futility of the situation. I, more practically, found the small emergency flashlight I kept in the side pocket of the car door. It was old, dim, and flickered precariously, but it was light. We crouched on the muddy ground, the weak beam of the flashlight cutting a pathetic circle in the impenetrable darkness. Liam, now completely resigned to the absurdity, was muttering to himself a litany of despair. The coffee shop, the sprinklers, the maitre d', and now the mud. Of course, the mud. It had to be mud. We searched, our hands carefully sweeping through the cold, squelchy earth. My fingers brushed against something hard and smooth. "Got it!" I exclaimed, holding up the muddy, velvet-covered box. Liam snatched it from me, his face a mixture of relief and utter mortification. He wiped a dollop of mud from the lid with his thumb, then climbed back into the car, defeated. I followed, shaking my hands free of the cold earth. He sat there, the muddy box clutched in his hand, his head bowed. The grand plan, the meticulously orchestrated day, lay in ruins around us, symbolized by a dead phone, a soggy photo album, and a muddy ring box. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice barely a whisper, thick with uncharacteristic defeat. "I'm so sorry, Chloe. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted to show you everything. I had this whole speech about how you're the most incredible person I've ever met, how every day with you is an adventure, even the quiet ones. I was going to talk about the coffee shop and our first real conversation in the park and that amazing dinner where we toasted our future. I wanted to tell you how much I love your laugh, even when it's at my expense, and how you make me a better person just by existing. I wanted to tell you that you're my best friend, my rock, my entire world, and I wanted to do it at sunset, with the perfect view, and then I was going to get down on one knee, and..." He trailed off, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down his muddy cheek. He was utterly, completely broken. His carefully constructed facade of perfection had finally shattered. And in that moment, in the quiet, unglamorous interior of our car, surrounded by the wreckage of his grand plans, something shifted within me. His confession, stripped bare of all the pomp and circumstance, was the most beautiful speech I had ever heard. The sheer, overwhelming effort he had put into this day, the depth of his love, shone through every ruined plan, every disastrous mishap. I started to laugh. It wasn't a giggle this time, or a suppressed chuckle. It was a deep, heartfelt, joyful laugh that bubbled up from my soul, mixing with the tears that were now streaming down my own face. Liam looked up, startled, his eyes wide with confusion. "Chloe, why are you laughing? I've ruined everything. This is supposed to be the most important moment of our lives, and I've turned it into a circus." "Exactly," I choked out, still laughing, wiping tears and mud from my face. "It's a circus! A beautiful, chaotic, hilarious circus. And it's 1,000 times better than any perfect generic proposal you could have ever cooked up, Liam Thornton." I leaned over, reaching for his hand, my fingers closing over the muddy velvet box. "This," I said, looking at the box, then at his earnest, tear-streaked face. "This is us, the sprinklers, the maitre d', the dead phone, the mud. It's all of it. It's real, and it's perfect." His eyes, still red-rimmed, searched mine. A flicker of hope, hesitant but undeniable, began to bloom in their depths. "So," I prompted, my voice soft, my heart full to bursting, "are you going to ask me, or are we just going to sit here, in the dark, with a muddy ring?" A small, genuine smile, the first truly unforced one of the day, touched his lips. He took a deep breath, and in that quiet, simple moment, free from the pressure of his script, free from the need for perfection, he looked at me, his eyes shining with a love that transcended all the day's disasters. He opened the now muddy velvet box. Inside, gleaming softly in the dim light of the flickering flashlight, was the ring. "Chloe," he said, his voice trembling slightly, but firm with genuine emotion. Will you marry me?" "Yes!" I cried, laughing and crying all at once, throwing my arms around his neck, nearly dislodging the muddy box from his grasp. 1,000 times yes. We sat there for a long time, holding each other, the quiet of the night enveloping us. The grand, meticulously planned proposal had gone spectacularly, hilariously wrong at every single turn. But in its unraveling, it had become something far more precious, far more meaningful than any flawless, movie-worthy moment could have ever been. This messy, chaotic, hilariously disastrous day was, I realized, the perfect representation of our relationship. It wasn't always graceful or perfectly orchestrated. There were unexpected sprinklers, condescending maitre d's, and rings dropped in the mud. But it was built on monumental effort, deep, unwavering love, and most importantly, the ability to laugh together when things inevitably fell apart. That, I concluded, was a better, more authentic, and infinitely more perfect foundation for a marriage than any picture-perfect memory could ever hope to be.